Hi everyone and welcome back to the Retro Shack. Don't worry, you're in the right place. So as you can see, we're in a new studio. But don't worry, the channel content won't change, just the practicalities of producing the show should greatly improve. We have more storage, more workshop space, and a studio that we don't have to take down and reassemble every time we want to record. Anyway, let us know what you think in the comments. This panel behind is a bit bare, we'll fill that up, but I am going to of course leave room for the YouTube play buttons. And as you know, if you're a regular viewer of the channel, I'm lucky enough to own a Spectrum Next. It's a fantastic FPGA implementation of the original Sinclair and Amstrad machines, and as both the Kickstarter 1 and 2 campaigns have totally sold out, it's fair to say there's a few of these machines around. And that of course means it's viable to start producing commercial software. So today we'll be looking at how physical retail boxed product works with the Next by taking a look at this, the Cuadragon, the Next Generation, a role-playing game for the Next. Also, you may have watched the episode where I refurbished a ZX81 and I wanted to get a 32K RAM upgrade done in order that I could play some of the great games like 3D Monster Maze. Well, that didn't go to plan, but a couple of good things have come out of that, so we'll talk about that also. Right, lots to get on with, so let's crack on. So let's start with the Spectrum Next and commercial software. How does that work? Can it mimic the feeling of the olden days of getting a new game with a box and a manual and then sticking that cassette or disc or ROM cartridge in the machine, powering it on and just playing? So this is Cuadragon, the Next Generation, and I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, and it's my first box game for the Next, and first impressions are pretty good. It's clearly an indie product, as it does lack the high-end polish you'd get on a major AAA title, but it's good enough, and it does the job of keeping the inside bits protected. The manual gives clear instructions on how to play the game on an emulator if you don't have a Next, but I do, so let's see what it says about that. And it's basically put the SD card in the machine and turn it on. The rest of the manual informs you of the basic controls and game mechanics, and on the surface it seems if you've ever played a Legend of Zelda game, you'll be right at home here. The game itself comes stored on an unlabelled micro SD card plugged into an SD card adapter with a label on it, and while this does give you flexibility when you want to use the game on your laptop or other device, I still think I'd like a properly printed full-size SD card built for the Next, but I guess that would be more expensive, and I guess it's all about keeping the costs down. So packaging and presentation get a 6 out of 10 from me. Nice, functional, but nothing too special. Let's take a look at the game itself, and according to the manual, I just pop the SD card into the machine and then power on. And all of this, at the very least, is reminiscent of the past, but before I get to the game itself, I'd like to talk about what it used to be like opening up a boxed retail game. You see, there was a time before the internet when everything you needed to know about the game was in the box. Let's take a trip down memory lane. And let's start with Wing Commander, the 3D space combat simulator. I mean, look at that. That box just says, come and play me. And on the back there's a plethora of screenshots and exciting features of the game. I don't know about you, but I just want to dive in and play. Opening the box was always a treat, and look at all the stuff that's in here. There's a huge, thick manual, and it just feels weighty, and there's just all sorts of cool stuff in it. There are stories, tactics, and if you page through there are blueprints and statistics, and there's just so much to read. And read it I invariably would, probably cover to cover and probably multiple times. Star maps, I mean look at it, it's great. And the thing of course was you couldn't look this stuff up on the internet. It didn't exist. You had to learn all you could about the game from what was in the box, and I loved it. Look at this, blueprints for all of the ships you can actually fly in the game. I would spend hours perusing each and every detail, learning what my ship could do, what it couldn't do, how it compared against the other enemy ships in the game and the other ships that I could aspire to own. Just amazing. Now admittedly Wing Commander was a effectively AAA title for its day, but nevertheless you've got to admit this is a level of presentation that you didn't mind spending AAA money on. And as if that big manual wasn't enough, you also get this very nice concise reference guide to keep at hand while you're playing the game. So that's Wing Commander, a superbly presented big box game from the early 90s. But you know what? Certain genres of game went the extra mile even on top of that. And of course I'm talking about role-playing games. Now these invariably came expertly packaged with all sorts and all manner of things inside the box to tempt you in. Take this game for example, Might and Magic 3 Isles of Terror, and this was the last big box game I ever bought for my Amiga, and it promises adventure, simulation, sights, sounds. I'll get addicted, I probably did, but again the box just entices you in, and inside, look at that, the staple of the 90s adventure game, a map. And because there was no internet, you couldn't go online and find everything out. You would just look at this map, see somewhere and think, I want to go there and find out what that is. And then of course, in the game, you'd have to find out how to do that. I used to have these pinned all over my walls. Some games even came with a cloth map. Here we've got a complete notepad, very thick, for taking all the notes and conversation pointers and tips and hints you might learn along the way. Completely unused, I was probably too anal to actually write in that. And again here we have a huge manual. Again this is a combination of a novella, history, lore, backstory, facts, figures, statistics. I mean it's just a pleasure to read. And just like with Wing Commander, there's a reference card to keep at hand while you're playing the game. Also in the box here I've got the game discs and what appears to be some save discs, so this will be interesting to load up at some point and see exactly how far I got. I don't think I finished this one. And while we're looking through the remainder of the items in this box, I want you to note that I'm not trying to be unfair to Cuadragon Next and its packaging. In fact, some modern AAA Nintendo Switch cartridges come even more sparsely packaged and don't even include a manual, and for some of those you're paying maybe £60. What I am saying however is that I miss the days when you bought a big box product and you had all of this stuff to look at while the game was loading and to read in bed of an evening. And maybe that's on me for thinking of Cuadragon Next as a retro game, and therefore perhaps my expectations were that it would come packaged as a retro game. But maybe it's being pitched as a modern game for a modern machine and I'm being completely unfair. So let's judge the game instead by how it plays, and I'm going to come right out of the gate and say you're either going to love this game or hate it. Now interestingly, in the settings there's options in the video to set to 256 colours for the next, black and white mode, although it seems still with a green chap, green monitor mode and orange monitor mode. Now these seem like just little nods to retro settings from the past with not really any meaningful use in the game, but I'll let that slide because you know what, some people out there may have enjoyed playing games on amber monitors. Not me, but there we go. Now there's a lot of text, I'm not going to read all this out, I'm going to just tell you I chose to be a boy and I chose to call myself Thomas. That should be enough for anyone, and we're into the game itself. Now interestingly, like some of the Ultima games, you don't roll dice or pick stats, you make a series of choices, and I guess that guides your character build. Now unlike the questions in the Ultima series, which were based on virtues and were a series of questions that would guide your moral standing or your loyalty, etc., you could make a fairly informed guess of what kind of person you wanted to be. In this they're a bit random, and I couldn't really understand what "it's a real disco flirt" actually meant. And once you got past the throwaway Star Wars reference, you're into a fairly typical Japanese RPG. And I feel I've been here 100 times in 100 games. I'm starting in Grandma's house, there are chests and wardrobes and drawers to look in, and you know what, I guess I'll find things and I'll put them in my inventory and I'll wander around, and it all looks a little bit similar, a little bit samey. And these type of games have been incredibly popular over the years. There are in fact hundreds of these. Now unfortunately this one doesn't really at this point set itself apart. There's nothing really grabbing me to make me want to play. But I hear you cry, surely this is the work of a small team, it's an object of love, there's lots of time and dedication gone into this, and you know what, it's probably pretty cheap. Well, actually not really. To get this boxed version would cost you €20, plus tax, plus shipping, and at that point you're starting to talk actually decent retail money. Now, for that I'm kind of expecting a little more. As I said, there are hundreds of these games available for different consoles, all of which can be emulated today, and all of which are probably a little bit more polished. However, this is new, it's for the Spectrum Next, and in that regard, there's not a lot of choice. So, I guess if you like Zelda type games, you like wandering from screen to screen, reading signs, piecing together the story, and occasionally fighting a few things, then this game could well be for you. But you may want to just stick with the digital download as it's a little bit cheaper. Now, the one thing that is different, although it is a little derivative of Monkey Island, is the insult fighting, where your opponent, a red blob in this case, hurls a nasty insult at me and I pick from the choices available an appropriately nasty response back. If my response is sufficiently nasty, I win. If it isn't, I lose. As I say, not sure how this scales in the game, but it is different, and you know what? Kudos for not sticking with the normal battle scenes. Also, I'm not sure why there's a picture of a Spectrum, as that does kind of take you out of the game. However, again, what do I know? Anyway, there we are, Cuadragon, the next generation. Positives, if you like Zelda, you'll probably like this. Negatives, if you played Zelda, you've probably played this. However, it's a good start, and you know what, the Next isn't exactly overflowing with good quality games at the moment. I'm hopeful that will change, but at the moment it's, you know, slim pickings. So anyway, that's the review. Hope you enjoyed it. Right, let's now talk about that ZX81. Let's rip the band-aid straight off. It's dead, Jim. It's a stiff, bereft of life, it rests in peace. It's run down the curtain and joined the choir invisible. It's an X machine. Specifically, when fitting the 32K upgrade, I accidentally lifted a few of the pads on the mainboard and noticed that the whole thing was incredibly fragile. And I'd made it much, much worse. Now, not wanting to disappoint anyone, I searched to see if anyone made a drop-in replacement motherboard for a ZX81, and they don't. There are no current active suppliers that do that. So we're making one. Yes, we're going to make our own replacement ZX81 mainboard, and it should be a drop-in replacement for us and for any of you who've got a dead ZX81 or one that just needs a new motherboard. We're currently actively working on that at the moment, and of course our good friends at PCBWay will be doing the manufacturing for us. And hopefully we can get that old machine alive and well and kicking. In the meantime, I did come across a very exciting project from Alejandro Valero Sebastian. I do hope I'm saying your name correctly. And Alejandro's project is the ZX80-81, and it's a replica kit of a ZX80 switchable to become a ZX81. So I'm going to be building that next week and see how that turns out, and hopefully we'll be playing Monster Maze before we know it. It is a hardware compatible kit with both the ZX80 and the ZX81, and it also has 32K of memory, so hopefully Monster Maze won't be long. Anyway, hope you've enjoyed the episode, hope you like the new studio. If you like the channel, please hit like and subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications of new content, and please leave comments because we always like to read them. Anyway, until next time in the shack, goodbye.